Okay, so let me explain things. I'm trying to keep it simple. There's a lot of complex things going on here. The government is running a psychological operation on me, and the evidence is conclusive. Right? There's 23 witnesses to the campaign against me, including the fumes and poisoning of drinks and what have you. And we live in a society here in America where people play stupid about things, right? You can tell by the way the churches have changed their narratives, the various groups, atheist groups, feminist groups, LGBT groups. There's a lot of people with long fingernails and a lot of people kind of acting who are into the occult, okay? And that includes law enforcement and the FBI and the military, etc. And so people are playing stupid about things, okay? Take, for example, Gangstalking. If you look at the exact response by countless people in the comments, it's clear that it's malicious. They're very intolerant. They have a very evil response, okay? And that proves definitively that there are a lot of people willing to get together and to be evil toward people, okay? And in a way that appears to be organized. Then when we look at the evidence that's presented, the Havana syndrome and other things that have occurred, the history of psychological operations, it is extremely unreasonable for society to respond the way they have. There's not been any significant investigation into gang stalking that I'm aware of, okay? And I've been looking into this thing for a long time. The news companies, New York Times, have been extremely unreasonable. Vice, very unreasonable, very one-sided. A typical response that we see when the government and the news companies have come together for the purpose of reinforcing propaganda. For example, under the Bush administration, I believe it came out they spent something like $3 billion or some really large amount of money on media spin, right? Spinning things. And this is no exception. So when we see this here, it's clear. The evidence is clear. I also have camera evidence of them hacking my phone. You can see them typing stuff into my phone, etc. Okay, you can see the the phone going through the motions as if keys are pressed, and it actually makes a word at some point. I forgot what it was, and it's clear that it's not some random glitch. It's one of my videos that has the most views of all time. I've been making videos for many years. They've been suppressed. That video only had like 30,000 views or 10,000 or 20,000 views. But I tend to not get that many views in my videos because they're suppressed. Even though I add tags, I cover a lot of important and common topics, you name it, okay? And that's clearly another sign that there's that manipulation taking place. So, in a nutshell, what's been going on today with the drinks, now that you have that kind of background that makes it clear that I'm telling the truth, okay? When I walk into stores, there's a lot of fumes in the air and people, they're playing stupid about it. And I've noticed it before the coronavirus epidemic took place. So it's not something the government can say, hey, we're doing that because the coronavirus. Okay. I have witnesses that have, more than one witness that have testified to the fumes as well. Okay. And when I go there, okay, I tend to go for the same type of drink. At least I used to. And that type of drink is no longer being sold in the same form. And so I'm going to different places trying to find the old form of the drink, and they put one bottle here and one bottle there, okay? And when I go in there, people typically, they say no, or they shake their head yes, and they have this kind of sarcastic smile on their face, and it's clearly aimed at me, okay? People behave in a certain way that if anyone was here, they would know for sure that it's deliberate. And a lot of these people have, they drive black vehicles with black tinted windows with black rims. In fact, I'm parked by 3 of those vehicles right now. In fact, I'll make that the picture of this video. So I'm going to stop here for a second and make that picture real quick. So let me be clear about this. It's not uncommon for people to drive vehicles with black tinted windows, even with black rims these days. For whatever reason, psyops are so common and people are supporting the psyop state. You see American flags that are black. They didn't have that when I was younger. They were red, white, and blue the whole time when I was younger. Now you see a lot of flags that are black, and that symbolizes an allegiance to a kind of deep state way of thinking, a psychological operation way of thinking. And are people playing stupid about this? You betcha. Okay? People have been acting very strange for a long time. And some people chop it up to what happened after the coronavirus, right? People being forced to kind of stay at home more and so on and so forth, shelter in place and what have you. But that's not the entire story, okay? We see definitive proof that people are being persecuted. And America has a long history of corporate sabotage, corporate espionage, workplace bullying, sexual harassment in the corporations, and the government and law enforcement and the military as well. Let me just do a quick search. It's clear that just like with the military's organized effort to stifle whistleblowers there who have been raped, we see that with the Fort Hood, fiasco and all those victims there and this massive cover-up. We see the same thing here with gangstalking. And so as right now, they're playing this kind of game about drinking. I made it clear to them. I say, don't mess with don't violate my rights, of course, but especially don't mess with the food and the drink, because my dad came here during the Civil War and like over 1 million people died of starvation. So that's far worse than putting a swastika on a Jewish person's home or on a synagogue. So I said, don't mess with the food, don't mess with and they took it there. And there's been racial harassment, there's been sexual harassment. So do you think it is fair for me to point out that that I'm making rulings against them, for God to punish them and their offspring to the extreme? Because remember, these people come from a long line of people who have been doing the same types of things: slavery, segregation, whipping and raping slaves, you name it, okay? And they're allies. And these are the people who have the genes that are inclined to help them to the point that they're helping. Look at John 8, for example. It says you have the same inclinations and tendencies as the devil, so you're the children of the devil, is the argument that's being made, not necessarily just to the Jews. It's a blueprint for everybody who's like that. If you were Abraham's children, Jew or Gentile, you would do what he did. And if you're not, you wouldn't do what he did. And Abraham went to war for God and for the principles of God. Okay? He didn't shrink to fit. He stood up for the vulnerable. But you people are not doing that, because you're not the children of Abraham, whether you're a Jew or Gentile or otherwise, or whatever else could be. Okay. So, and technically, some people say it's nothing else, but I've heard people argue the semantics around the word Gentile. So anyway, so as we see with this drink thing, right? I've been to and yesterday I went to 2 Safeways. I went to Target. I went to, some other stores as well. I think Lucky's or something. Today, I just went to Walmart, so on and so forth. I get fumed. My eyes are being messed up. It's harder for me to speak. Okay? It's clear when I'm fumed because I get cotton mouth. It's harder for me to speak. Okay? I feel it in my chest and lungs. I mean, how many of you, if you felt those symptoms, would think that maybe you're crazy when you got 23 witnesses to people fuming and poisoning you? I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. It's conclusive. It's substantiated. No senior detective would look at this and say, hey, he must be crazy. They would say they must be doing it to him, especially because police is often involved, if not always involved, in the gang stalking as well. I mean, this is open and shut. Okay? So how many of you, when I'm not going to get justice, certainly not in a timely fashion, so even if it comes later, it's not true justice because it shouldn't have taken that long, okay? How many of you think that it's wrong for me, as the person who's the most righteous person that ever lived, when you use universal logic, right? Focused intensity, right? The path of the righteous is like the morning sun shining brighter, ever brighter to the full light of day. That connects to Psalm 19. Which tells us that the Son of God is the champion of God, the bridegroom, okay? And the root and offspring of David in Revelation, which points to me, right? It's martial arts. You don't have to actually kill somebody to prove you're the best in martial arts. You could tell how I could easily outmaneuver him, that I would kill him in single combat. No brainer. And it's through God Almighty's decision with nature, and not privilege or tech or cheating or ill-gotten gains like you see all these guys on TV using, okay, that allowed me to triumph. So do you think it is unfair for me to call on God with all my heart to punish everyone outside the divine order and their offspring to the extreme? Do you think that this is something that I shouldn't be allowed to say? Do you think it's unfair? Make your case. People who threaten people and are crazy, they don't reach out to the audience. They don't. And they don't have people in the audience, okay, who make it clear. They don't reach out to the audience in a way that's logical. And they don't have people in the audience who make it clear that they agree with what he's saying. I have witnesses, and I have people who have commented in the past who say, yes, you're logical. And if they think you're not logical, they're just being malicious. So it's clear that I'm in the right here. And I think that's important for me to end by saying this. Okay, I have no intention of being violent or harming myself, but it's non-negotiable for me. I'm not going to assimilate into this evil world. Okay, I can accept death on the drop of a hat. I cannot accept assimilation. I can accept being compensated and left alone, but I cannot accept assimilation. Okay? And if someone in my shoes was to start shooting people, let's face it, okay? I'm not going to do that myself, but let's face it, they would be right. And that would be self-defense. And it's overkill by the fact that the state refuses to acknowledge what has happened. They'll have known what has happened. They'll have obstructed justice. And they'll have played stupid about the fact that it's self-defense and that they covertly drugged them to cause it. And that is key here. And again, that's not something that I intend to do. It's not something I'm going to do. But someone in my shoes, if they did, they would be justified in doing so because these people are causing them physical harm. When you defend yourself, you don't have to necessarily have a logical chance to cause them to stop attacking you to defend yourself. For example, if 10 people attacked you with bats, you're probably going to beat your ass, right? You don't have to have a logical way to overcome them. But if you killed one or two, you would be justified. And that's how wrong the state is here. And that's how evil and illegal and sick what they're doing is. They do not have the moral high ground. And if you're not moral, you're not a man. So it's fair to say that there's not a man among them.